Gate agent mocked black woman at check-in. Then, her corporate badge froze the room. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The first thing to hit wasn't the crowd or the fluorescent glare. It was the sound of a passport slapping laminate. "Ma'am, this line is for priority passengers only," the gate agent said, eyebrows arched like a gate themselves. She didn't whisper. She wanted the terminal to hear it. Phones hovered. A stroller squeaked. Overhead, gate C5 blinked boarding in 20 minutes, but the room had already taken off without the plane. Amara Johnson didn't flinch. Dark blouse, gray slacks, carry-on the size of a promise, plain enough to disappear until someone decided she shouldn't be seen at all. She stood in that thin strip of carpet where courtesy ends and control begins, breathing slow, steady, as if her ribs had learned to count to 10 every time a stranger tried to measure her. The agent, Sophie Miller, hair coiled tight, smile tighter, nudged Amara's passport back with 2 fingers. "You can step aside while we assist our actual priority guests." The word actual floated like perfume laced with something sharper. A man in a linen blazer half smirked. A woman with pearl studs pretended not to listen and then strained to hear. The scanner beeped green for the couple behind Amara, who slid past as if the lane were theirs by birthright. Mark, a second agent, leaned toward Sophie without bothering to lower his voice. "Printed at home upgrade. Seen it last week." Amara let the comment pass. Air tasted recycled, contempt brand new. Above them, the security camera stared with its one glass eye unblinking, selective, the kind of witness that rarely testifies. "Boarding pass?" Sophie repeated, palm open like a summons. Amara handed it over. The agent scanned. Beep clean, clear, undeniable. Sophie's smile didn't move. System glitch. She lifted the mic to her lips. "Supervisor to C5. Possible fraudulent ticket." The terminal shifted. Heads turned in ripples. A toddler stopped kicking the seat and watched the story gather itself. Farther down the rope line, a trainee in a navy vest, Jenna, squinted at the shared monitor. Her finger hovered over a tag only agents see. Corporate Priority Johnson Holdings. She knew better than to speak. She also knew silence breeds the wrong kind of truth. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amara. Sophie tapped the pass again, harder, like force could rewrite facts. "You'll need to wait over there," she said, chin flicking toward a low metal bench, the one designed to cool your dignity while you cooperate. "I'm fine here," Amara replied, voice even, warm enough to be human, cool enough to be steel. "Ma'am," Sophie said, "priority is for travelers who look like they know how this works." It slipped out clean, practiced, a blade wrapped in policy. Somewhere in the cluster, a phone camera twitched higher. The man in linen whispered, "Yikes," and didn't move an inch. A memory pooled at the base of Amara's spine. 17 summer heat, a boarding door in Charlotte, a security guard who called her sweetheart and mistake in the same breath. She'd slept on a plastic chair while the last flight left without her. The shame then had been raw. Today, it was tempered, hammered into something that held its edge. "Scan it once more," she said. Sophie's smile sharpened. "We don't have time to babysit counterfeits." Beep, green again. Facts refused to collaborate with bias. Mark leaned over Sophie's shoulder. "Want me to flag security?" "Do it," Sophie said, eyes not leaving Amara's face. "And note non-compliant." Yenna swallowed. Her thumb slipped, almost by accident, almost on purpose, capturing a timestamp and log. Boarding pass validated C, 58 hours, 41 minutes, and 12 seconds. She could feel the room's barometer drop, the air thickening with that storm-new smell right before rain. A woman in row-rope whispered, "She looks calm." Her friend murmured back, "Calm scares them." Sophie planted a manicured nail on the counter, tapping time. "If you keep obstructing, we'll reassign your seat." "My seat is 2A, Amara said. "It isn't homeless." Quote, "Cute," Sophie said. "Economy needs volunteers." The loudspeaker coughed out an apology for a different flight. An elderly couple shuffled past, studying Amara like a museum piece, exhibit of audacity. Phones kept their quiet vigil, red dots blooming. The terminal's hum thinned into lines, jetway hiss, snack cart wheels, the impatient chorus of shoes. Name? Sophie asked, as if the letters might betray her. Amara Johnson. Spelled? You know how it's spelled? Quote. That earned a small, strangled laugh from someone who didn't mean to have courage today. Sophie flushed, then lifted the mic again. Security to C5. Potential fraud attempting priority access. Potential. Fraud. Attempting. 3 words arranged like handcuffs. Jenna's voice arrived soft and brave, the way a first truth enters a hostile room. Her ticket's real. She froze when Sophie turned. I saw the corporate tag, Johnson. Stay out of this, rookie, Sophie snapped, slicing the sentence in half. Go print bag tags. Amara's phone buzzed once in her palm, a heartbeat in glass. She didn't look down. She didn't look away. She had learned long ago that the longest distance in America is the space between proof and permission. Here's what's going to happen, Sophie announced, tone bright with authority, loud enough to spray across the waiting area. We will verify with corporate. If nothing comes back, you'll be placed on standby. If you raise your voice, you'll be escorted out. You're mistaking patience for weakness, Amara said quietly. That's your last mistake today. For a second, just a second, the terminal paused. The arrivals board flickered. The stroller squeaked and then didn't. Sophie blinked like a shutter in bright light. Somewhere close, a little boy asked his mother, "Why is that lady mean?" And no one had an answer ready. Step aside, Sophie insisted, reaching for the boarding pass like it belonged to her hand. Amara let her take it. She also let the silence build brick by brick until the room had to live inside it. Then she turned slightly, as if speaking to the air, but the words landed with purpose. Now, she said, we do this properly. The mic hissed. The scanner waited. The crowd leaned in. And the story of Gate C5, Monday morning, North Air, began to write itself in front of everyone who thought they were just catching a flight. Security didn't arrive right away. That was almost worse. It left the tension free to grow, wild and hungry, like static before a lightning strike. Sophie kept talking not to Amara anymore, but around her, the way people talk when they want the world to join in their judgment. Ma'am, when you falsify a ticket, it slows everyone down, she said, her voice pitching higher for the audience. Please step aside. People started choosing sides with their silence. A man in business class shoes sighed like she was an inconvenience. A teenager mouthed, "That's messed up." A mother pulled her kid a little closer, whispering, "Don't stare." Jenna, the trainee, still hovered behind the counter, half hidden, half trembling. She glanced at the screen again. The green corporate priority tag glowed steady, real, verified. She looked up at Sophie and Mark, then down at her ID badge, wondering which side of her uniform she was supposed to honor. Amara shifted her weight slightly, not out of discomfort, but out of control. Every move precise, deliberate, the kind of calm that scares people who live off chaos. Sophie crossed her arms. We've had enough scams this month. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Quote, harder for who? Amara asked quietly. Mark chuckled. Lady, just admit you can't afford first class. It'll save everyone time. The words landed hard enough to draw air out of the row. Amara's eyes didn't narrow, they stilled. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone chimed with a text notification, then stayed up, recording. You can't talk to passengers like that, Jenna blurted before she could stop herself. Sophie turned, a flash of irritation like a whip crack. Excuse me? I said, Jenna's voice faltered but didn't die. Her boarding pass is valid. I just checked the internal log. It's corporate level. A few heads turned toward the intern. Sophie forced a laugh that came out like glass breaking. Oh, that's cute, she said. Little trainee thinks she's an auditor now. Mark added, go print coffee, sweetheart. Laughter nervous, unsure, rippling from 2 passengers who didn't want to pick a fight with prejudice before a flight. Jenna bit her lip. Amara turned to her and said softly, thank you. It wasn't loud, but it carried. Then Sophie leaned closer, her perfume thick with authority. Listen, ma'am, she hissed. If you're really corporate, prove it. Show me a work badge. Show me something real. Amara met her eyes. You're asking for proof of belonging? Sophie blinked, caught off guard. I'm asking for verification. Same thing, Amara said. Mark laughed again, but this time it sounded smaller. Sophie looked over her shoulder. Security's taking forever. Mark, call again. Mark grabbed the desk phone. Control, this is C5. We've got a situation, possible impersonation. Yeah, still here. Impersonation. The word hit the room like a trigger. A ripple of discomfort passed through the waiting area. A man in a gray hoodie muttered, "How you impersonate a ticket?" His girlfriend whispered back, "You can't. They're just trying her." Quote. Amara's fingers stayed still at her side, one thumb grazing the cool edge of her phone. She wasn't calling anyone yet, not until they finished painting their picture. Jenna's eyes flicked toward her again, apology written all over them. Amara gave the smallest nod permission to breathe. Sophie now had an audience, and she played to it. "Folks, this will just take a minute," she said, tone sugary. "Thank you for your patience while we verify." Quote. The irony was a live wire. The woman being wronged thanked no one. The one doing the wrong performed gratitude. A child's voice broke the silence. "Mom, she didn't do anything." The mother shushed him, cheeks flushed. Behind the counter, Mark turned back from the phone. "Security says they're coming from the far terminal." "Good," Sophie said. "Maybe then we'll get some truth here." Amara tilted her head slightly. "Truth doesn't need an escort." The words made even the air pause. She remembered that voice inside her father's car years ago when they were stopped outside Raleigh. Officer had said license and registration like an accusation. Her father's hand had shaken only once when Amara reached to steady it. "You let them speak first," he'd told her. "Then you make them listen." And that's exactly what she did now. "I've complied," she said evenly. "You scanned the pass 3 times. Each time it verified. What more do you need?" Sophie scoffed. "People fake everything these days." "Evan respect?" Amara asked. Mark muttered. "Smart mouth." A woman by the window said quietly, "She's right." It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Another passenger nodded. Then another. The weight of the crowd was shifting. Jenna took a breath and stepped forward, voice shaking but audible. "Her name is Amara Johnson. It's in the system under corporate priority. You can check it yourself." Sophie turned, furious. "Do you want to lose your job?" Jenna swallowed. "Not as much as I want to keep my dignity." For a heartbeat, the terminal froze, not the kind of silence that hides, but the kind that waits. Then Sophie snapped, "Security now!" Her voice echoed off glass and tile, too loud, too late. Every phone rose at once, tiny red dots blinking, capturing injustice like fireflies in a jar. And in the middle of it all, Amara didn't move. Her stillness became the loudest thing in the room. The crowd didn't know it yet, but the storm wasn't coming from outside the terminal. It was standing right there at gate C5, wrapped in calm, ready to end the silence in a single call. The call for security echoed down the corridor, but what arrived first was silence. That heavy, cinematic kind of silence, the kind that tells you something's about to change. Sophie stood tall behind the counter, one hand on her hip, the other gripping Amara's passport like it was evidence in a trial. "You're making this difficult," she said, every syllable sharpened. Amara didn't move. "I'm just existing." A soft gasp rolled through the gate, a sentence that simple shouldn't feel like defiance, but it did. Mark checked the boarding monitor, pretending to work, pretending not to sweat. "Control says 2 officers are on their way," he muttered. "Good," Sophie replied. "Maybe then she'll understand how real consequences work." "Real consequences?" Amara repeated, calm as gravity. "You might want to write that line down. It's about to matter." Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. The quiet power in it pulled more eyes than the loudest shout could have. A man in a suit halfway down the line whispered to his wife, "She's not wrong." Another passenger, filming quietly, mouthed, "This is insane." Sophie leaned closer, lowering her tone. "You think dressing nice buys respect? It doesn't." Amara's lips curved, not quite a smile. "I'm not dressed to buy it. I'm dressed to test it." For the first time, Sophie blinked. Then came the flashback so fast it could have been a flicker between frames. She was 17 again, Charlotte Airport, Sunday dress. Her first solo trip, college orientation. The agent had looked her up and down and said, "You must be in the wrong line." She'd tried to explain. He'd laughed, waved her off. She'd spent the night in the terminal pretending to read a map so no one would ask why she was still there. That night became the blueprint of her empire, the blueprint she was now standing on, full circle. The memory dissolved as the hiss of a walkie-talkie cut through the air. 2 uniformed guards stepped in, one tall and tired, the other young, unsure. "Which passenger?" the tall one asked. Sophie pointed like she was swatting a fly. "Her, fraudulent ticket, non-compliant." The younger guard hesitated. "You sure?" "She's calm." Sophie snapped. Protocol says remove the obstruction. Quote. Mark added quickly. She refused to step aside. Obstruction, Amara repeated softly, tasting the word. That's a new way to say standing in line. The older guard sighed. Ma'am, can we speak over here? No, Amara said gently. You'll speak right here. You were called because someone assumed calm means guilt. Let's not add to that. He blinked. Ma'am, it's just procedure. And this, she said, is exactly what procedure looks like when no one questions it. The guard's radio crackled again. From behind them, a voice called out, Security log shows corporate priority, verified boarding pass. The young guard turned. Wait, what? Everyone froze. It was Jenna. She was holding a printed sheet, her hands shaking, but her voice strong. I pulled the internal record. It's real. You've been targeting a verified passenger. Sophie's face drained of color. You accessed restricted data? That's termination, Jenna. Jenna took a step forward. Maybe, but not before I fix the mistake you're making. Gasps rippled. Phones lifted higher. Sophie stammered, This isn't your concern. Amara's tone stayed level. It became her concern the moment you made bias sound like policy. The older guard scratched his head. I don't know what's going on, but this doesn't look right. Mark Muted, everyone's filming. We'll look bad. You already do, Jenna said quietly. Sophie turned to Amara, grasping for control. You're loving this attention, aren't you? Amara shook her head. No, I'm loving the truth finding its microphone. Then she lifted her phone not to record but to call. Her thumb hovered over a single contact. The same calm she'd carried for 20 years slid back into place like armor. Nina, she said softly into the receiver. Initiate Protocol 7. Log every word, every timestamp, every badge number. We'll handle it live. Quote. Yes, ma'am, came the crisp reply through the tiny speaker. The guards exchanged glances. Mark took a nervous step back. Sophie scoffed. Oh, what? You're calling your lawyer? Amara met her gaze, voice smooth as glass. No, I'm calling my office. Silence. Then the first murmur spread. Wait, what office? Another voice followed. She said corporate priority, right? The young guard's radio crackled again. Dispatch? We just got a message someone named Johnson Holdings requesting a live line to corporate security. What's that about? Sophie's expression faltered. Johnson Holdings? She whispered. Jenna exhaled. Yes, that Johnson Holdings. The room turned electric. Phones tilted upward, capturing the shift the moment before the world rearranged itself. Amara lowered her phone, gaze unwavering. I told you, she said softly. Truth doesn't need an escort. Coo! The older guard took one respectful step back. The younger one whispered, Ma'am, who are you? Amara glanced at her boarding pass, then back at him. You'll find out in a minute. And as the intercom crackled above them, flight attendants frozen mid-motion, the sound of corporate justice began to hum quietly through the terminal's walls like thunder warming up before the storm. The hum that filled Gate C5 wasn't noise anymore. It was energy tight, focused, electric, the kind of charge that always comes right before a storm finally breaks. Sophie's voice cracked the moment she realized the phones hadn't gone down, they'd multiplied. Passengers were recording from every angle now. Even the intercom above the counter buzzed faintly, feedback catching her breath like a guilty echo. Security, do something, she hissed. This is a disruption. The older guard shook his head. Ma'am, from what I'm seeing, she's not disrupting anything. Quote. The younger guard added quietly, she hasn't even moved. Amara stood exactly where she had since the beginning, centered, still, anchored to truth. Her phone was in her hand, a calm pulse of light on the screen. She spoke without raising her voice. Nina, connect corporate oversight. Patch them through to North Air HQ. Already on the line, Nina's voice replied through the earpiece. Internal review listening live. Timestamp logged at 9:02. Sophie's laugh came out brittle. You can't just call corporate. That's not how this works. Amara tilted her head. That's exactly how this works. The crowd leaned in, the moment stretched, and then the speakerphone crackled soft at first, then clear as a confession. Gate C5, this is Rachel from North Air Corporate Compliance, the voice announced. We're aware of an incident involving a verified corporate priority passenger. Please confirm staff present. Mark froze. What? How did they? Sophie snatched the phone from the counter. This is a misunderstanding, she said, too fast, too loud. We were just following protocol. Rachel's tone didn't bend. Protocol doesn't include public humiliation. All audio from this gate is now being recorded for audit. That word audit landed like a verdict. Sophie's face drained of color. The crowd murmured. Jenna swallowed hard, but a tiny smile flickered behind her nerves. Amara finally moved. Just one step forward, enough to make everyone else step back. "I asked you to scan my ticket," she said quietly. "You did. It was valid. 3 times. And yet you called security. You called me a fraud. You turned your bias into policy." Rachel's voice carried through the speaker again. "Miss Johnson, corporate. Thanks you for your patience. We'll be escalating this to executive review immediately." Mark whispered, "Wait, Johnson?" Amara didn't look at him. "You wanted proof. Here it is." "Kund." The older guard shifted his weight, muttering, "Oh, hell." Sophie tried to recover. "Ma'am, if you really are who you say, then you understand we have to verify." "I understand," Amara said, "that verification should never look like degradation." The room fell completely still. You could hear the wheels of a stroller lock. Someone's boarding pass fluttered to the floor. Nina's voice returned, crisp and calm through Amara's line. "Corporate oversight requests your authorization to initiate internal audit protocol. Confirm, ma'am?" "Confirm," Amara said. "Record everything that happened from first insult to last silence." A pause, then a simple reply. "Confirmed. Logging and freezing local access." The terminal lights flickered for half a second, the system syncing. Sophie's monitor went blank. Mark's scanner beeped red. The North Air logo froze mid-animation on the big screen. "What just happened?" Mark whispered. "What? How did they—" Sophie snatched the phone from the counter. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, too fast, too loud. "We were just following protocol." Rachel's tone didn't bend. "Protocol doesn't include public humiliation. All audio from this gate is now being recorded for audit." That word audit landed like a verdict. Sophie's face drained of color. The crowd murmured. Jenna swallowed hard, but a tiny smile flickered behind her nerves. Amara finally moved. Quote, "For the first time since the confrontation began, the tension didn't climb, it collapsed. Not with shouting, not with violence, but with accountability. The kind that doesn't announce itself. It just arrives." Jenna exhaled, the air shaking out of her like she'd been holding it for days. The older guard lowered his gaze. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I think you just ended a whole chapter here." Amara offered a small, genuine smile. "Not ended, corrected." She lifted her phone once more. "Nina," she said, "thank the oversight team for responding quickly, and send my regards to the CEO." There was a beat of silence before Nina answered, a smile audible in her voice. "Already on it, ma'am. The CEO is you." Gasps, laughter, awe. Sophie took a step back, eyes wide. You're the CEO?" Amara's answer came like a slow door closing. "I'm the reason you have this job and the reason you're about to lose it." The terminal wasn't loud anymore. It was reverent, like a courtroom that had just witnessed its verdict. Outside, a plane taxied past the window, its engine rumble syncing perfectly with the hush that followed. Inside, Amara set her phone down, collected her boarding pass, and looked at the guards. "Gentlemen," she said softly, "thank you for your patience. You can stand down." They nodded, almost saluting without meaning to. Then Amara turned toward the boarding gate, calm as sunrise. And for the first time that morning, everyone at C5 stood not to board, but to bear witness. The moment Sophie's badge blinked red, time itself seemed to hesitate. The monitor behind her froze mid-frame, the cursor stuck between one breath and the next. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Did that really just happen?" Someone else answered, "Yes, it did." And in that suspended second, Amara stopped hearing the terminal. The noise faded. The applause, the gasps, the shuffle of security all melted into something distant, like sound underwater. Because her mind was already traveling somewhere else. Back 16 years. Back to a smaller airport, one terminal, one gate, Charlotte, North Carolina. She was 17. A borrowed suitcase. A scholarship letter folded in her pocket like a passport to a different life. Her father had driven her to the airport in a car that coughed more than it ran. He had pressed a $20 bill into her hand. For emergencies, he'd said, smiling like it wasn't all he had. At the counter, a woman behind the desk had looked her up and down. "You sure this ticket's yours?" "Yes, ma'am," she'd said softly. The woman's laugh was polite, practiced, cruel. "Sweetheart, this line's for business class." "I know," Amara had replied. "You must be mistaken." Quote. The clerk had waved her aside, called the next passenger, and motioned to security when Amara didn't move fast enough. She had slept that night sitting upright, backpack for a pillow, jacket for a blanket, pride for a wall. She had promised herself she'd never forget how that humiliation felt, not the words, but the weight. It wasn't rage that shaped her, it was clarity. That night became blueprints. The hotel empire, the corporate investments, the airline stake. Every contract she'd signed since was a note in the same song. Never again. The memory broke, and the present snapped back into focus, loud, fluorescent, real. The crowd was murmuring, but not about her anymore. They were murmuring for her. Mark stood frozen, staring at his locked screen, muttering, "This can't be happening." Sophie's voice was tiny, stripped of performance. I didn't know who you were." Amara turned to her. "That's the problem," she said. "You treated me like who you thought I wasn't." Sophie opened her mouth, closed it again. Behind her, Jenna stood tall, still holding the printout, the ink smudged slightly from her shaking hands. The older guard leaned against the counter, head bowed, as if in silent apology. The boarding sign above them flickered from paused to final call, but no one moved. The flight could wait. Everyone wanted to see what dignity looked like when it finally won. Amara took a slow step forward. Her heels clicked softly, rhythm steady, echoing against glass and tile. Each sound landed like punctuation in a speech that didn't need words. She placed her passport on the counter again, flat, deliberate. "Scan it," she said quietly. Sophie hesitated, then did. Beep. Green. The same sound as before, but this time it rang different. This time it sounded like truth. A passenger near the window started clapping just once, awkwardly. Then another joined, and another, until the sound filled the terminal, not wild applause, but respectful, measured, earned. Amara didn't smile. She just nodded once, as if acknowledging a verdict she already knew was coming. Then she turned to Jenna. "Send me your email," she said softly. "We'll be in touch." Jenna blinked. "Ma'am?" "You stood up when it wasn't safe to. That matters." Tears welled but didn't fall. "Thank you," Jenna whispered. "No," Amara said. "Thank you for remembering what integrity looks like." Quote. She picked up her boarding pass, slid her phone into her coat pocket, and turned to the guards. "All clear," she said. "No further action required." They nodded, grateful to stand down from a war they hadn't started. Then, just before stepping onto the jet bridge, she paused and looked back one last time. Her eyes swept the gate, the crowd, the staff. She wasn't angry anymore. She was steady, and in that stillness was a kind of grace that filled the room more completely than fury ever could. Slow motion. Her hand lifted the boarding pass. The light above the scanner blinked green. Her foot crossed the threshold. Voiceover, soft, deliberate. She remembered the night she was told she didn't belong, and every step since has been proof that she always did. The camera followed her into the tunnel of the jet bridge, white light narrowing around her like a coronation. Behind her, Sophie stood small, her headset dangling, her voice gone. And as the plane door closed with that soft metallic sigh, the story of Gate C5 didn't end, it simply took off. The cabin door was still open when the call came through. Amara hadn't even fastened her seatbelt. Her phone buzzed once, then again not frantic, just certain. She answered with a whisper that carried like thunder. "Go ahead, Nina." Quote. From the speaker came the sound of power moving quietly, keystrokes, headsets, decision-makers who no longer needed introductions. "Corporate oversight confirmed," Nina said. "We've completed the preliminary audit. The gate agent and supervisor have been suspended. Local management requests to speak with you." Amara looked out the window, where the tarmac shimmered in mid-morning light. "No need," she said. "Let the system finish what it started." Quote. The intercom at Gate C5 crackled to life behind her, broadcasting across the terminal. "This is a message from North Air Corporate Oversight. Effective immediately, operations at Gate C5 are under executive review. Please stand by for instruction." Passengers still waiting to board froze in place. Mark's radio blinked red. Sophie reached for her headset, but her badge refused her one small flicker, one quiet denial. Access denied. Jenna was still at the counter, hand over her mouth, tears she didn't mean to show glinting under the LED lights. A man whispered to his daughter, "That woman in first class, she's the reason this is happening." The girl looked up, wide-eyed. "Is she in trouble?" He shook his head. "No, honey, she's the reason it stopped." Inside the plane, the air felt weightless, thinner, as if the cabin itself knew who it was carrying. Amara set her phone on airplane mode, then paused one more call. She dialed through the corporate channel. When the line picked up, her voice was velvet steel. Rachel, confirm all documentation saved and make the announcement public. Understood, Miss Johnson. Corporate apology to be issued immediately. You'd like to include your statement. Yes, she said. Keep it simple. A few minutes later, her words appeared on every North Air screen in the terminal. Dignity is not a privilege you grant. It's a right you respect. Quote, Amara Johnson, CEO, Johnson Holdings, gasps rippled through the gate like wind through a field. Phones lit up screenshots, live posts, the beginning of a viral wave. One caption read, "She didn't yell, she just rewrote the rules." Sophie stood still, staring at the words glowing on the monitor, her own reflection caught between them. Mark whispered, "She was the CEO?" Jenna answered softly, "She is the CEO." The crowd began to applaud again, louder this time. Not for punishment, for proof that calm doesn't mean powerless. Back in her seat, Amara exhaled. The plane's engines began to hum, a low vibration under her palms. The attendant leaned in, recognizing her from the announcement. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "we're honored to have you on board." Amara smiled faintly. "You have no idea how much that means today." She fastened her belt, eyes on the window. The gate outside shimmered in the heat. Tiny figures still gathered near the counter, the same place that had tried to shrink her an hour ago. Now it looked small, not because she'd grown taller, but because truth had finally filled the room. A soft chime signaled the door closing. The captain's voice came over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're cleared for departure." As the plane began to roll, Amara's reflection caught the morning sun, calm, unbothered, inevitable. She whispered to herself, words only the clouds could hear. "You called me a fraud, in a company I own." That line would travel farther than the flight itself, across phones, across headlines, across the invisible divide between prejudice and accountability. By the time North Air Flight 312 reached cruising altitude, millions had already watched the clip. Hashtags rose, commentary bloomed, and in the middle of it all, one truth stayed clear. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. The announcement spread through the terminal faster than sound could explain it. One line of text, one corporate signature. That was all it took for an empire of arrogance to collapse in real time. At Gate C5, the applause was uneven at first, surprised, cautious, like thunder warming up. Then it gathered. Quote, the crowd had stopped filming. They didn't need to anymore. The truth was already out there, posted, streamed, shared by the hundreds. Now people just wanted to witness what justice looked like when it finally stood its ground. A corporate manager in a navy blazer rushed in from the concourse, eyes wide, phone in hand. "Sophie Miller?" he called, scanning the room. She lifted a trembling hand. "You're to step away from the counter," he said. "Effective immediately." Quote, the crowd had stopped filming. They didn't need to anymore. The truth was already out there, posted, streamed, shared by the hundreds. Now people just wanted to witness what justice looked like when it finally stood its ground. A corporate manager in a navy blazer rushed in from the concourse, eyes wide, phone in hand. "Sophie Miller?" he called, scanning the room. She lifted a trembling hand. "You're to step away from the counter," he said. "Effective immediately." Quote, she stammered, I didn't mean..." "Corporate review will decide intent," he said evenly. "Right now, please surrender your ID badge." She hesitated, then unclipped it, the little rectangle of plastic, suddenly heavier than metal, and placed it on the counter. Mark followed suit. The manager looked to Jenna. "You're Jenna Brooks?" "Yes, sir. Corporate commends your honesty. Expect a call this afternoon." Jenna blinked, speechless. Sophie turned to her. "You set me up." Quote, Jenna shook her head. "No, you did. It wasn't venom, it was truth. And truth, spoken plainly, was the loudest sound in the terminal." The older security guard stepped forward, hat in his hands. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "is there anything else you need from us?" Amara's voice came through the overhead speaker, recorded now, calm and exact. "No. Just let the system breathe." People looked up at the sound. Behind her, Sophie stood small, her headset dangling, her voice gone. And as the plane door closed with that soft metallic sigh, the story of Gate C5 didn't end, it simply took off. The cabin door was still open when the call came through. Amara hadn't even fastened her seatbelt. Her phone buzzed once, then again not frantic, just certain. She answered with a whisper that carried like thunder. "Go ahead, Nina." Behind her, Sophie stood small, her headset dangling, her voice gone. And as the plane door closed with that soft metallic sigh, the story of Gate C5 didn't end, it simply took off. The cabin door was still open when the call came through. Amara hadn't even fastened her seatbelt. Her phone buzzed once, then again not frantic, just certain. She answered with a whisper that carried like thunder. "Go ahead, Nina." Quote. The crowd had stopped filming. They didn't need to anymore. The truth was already out there, posted, streamed, shared by the hundreds. Now people just wanted to witness what justice looked like when it finally stood its ground. A corporate manager in a navy blazer rushed in from the concourse, eyes wide, phone in hand. "Sophie Miller?" he called, scanning the room. She lifted a trembling hand. "You're to step away from the counter," he said. "Effective immediately." Behind her, Sophie stood small, her headset dangling, her voice gone. And as the plane door closed with that soft metallic sigh, the story of Gate C5 didn't end, it simply took off. The cabin door was still open when the call came through. Amara hadn't even fastened her seatbelt. Her phone buzzed once, then again not frantic, just certain. She answered with a whisper that carried like thunder. "Go ahead, Nina." Quote. The crowd had stopped filming. They didn't need to anymore. The truth was already out there, posted, streamed, shared by the hundreds. Now people just wanted to witness what justice looked like when it finally stood its ground. A corporate manager in a navy blazer rushed in from the concourse, eyes wide, phone in hand. "Sophie Miller?" he called, scanning the room. She lifted a trembling hand. "You're to step away from the counter," he said. "Effective immediately." Quote. She smiled, not the kind of smile that seeks attention, but the one that recognizes peace when it finally arrives. She turned toward the window. The sunlight poured across her face, reflecting faintly on the corporate badge clipped to her coat pocket, the same one that had silenced a terminal full of prejudice. But it wasn't the badge that carried power. It was what it stood for: earned authority, quiet dignity, unshakable self-worth. Down below, in airports across the country, the story had already rewritten itself into legend. News tickers scrolled. North Air under fire for racial profiling incident. CEO Amara Johnson praised for graceful response. Number raised the standard trends worldwide. In living rooms, offices, classrooms, people replayed the moment she'd simply said, "You called me a fraud," in a company I own. Some called it a mic drop. Others called it a lesson. But to Amara, it was neither. It was closure. She leaned her head back, eyes half closed, hearing her father's voice again from years ago. "You don't have to shout to be heard. Just be undeniable." The engines roared softly outside, steady, forward, sure. Below her, Gate C5 returned to normal operations, but everyone who'd been there moved differently, now slower to judge, quicker to think, quieter when confronted with what they didn't understand. Jenna sat at her new desk later that afternoon, a message from Johnson Holdings lighting her inbox. Subject: Integrity never goes unnoticed. Body: Welcome to the team. She read it twice before she believed it. Meanwhile, Sophie attended a hearing with HR the next morning. No cameras, no audience, no applause, just questions she'd never asked herself before. Some lessons are delivered loudly. Hers came in silence. Back on the plane, the flight leveled into a calm horizon of blue and gold. Amara opened her laptop, typed 3 lines into a new memo, and closed it again. Respect should never depend on appearance. Power should never require permission. And dignity must always travel first class. She looked out at the sun above the clouds, the light so bright it erased everything beneath it. Voiceover, slow and final. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. And in doing so, she gave the world a new definition of calm power. The music would fade here, soft piano, slow strings, the kind that lingers after truth. Fade to black. Hashtag glowing in white on screen. Number raised the standard. Number Amara Johnson. The screen fades in from black. Soft music, piano, and low strings still hums beneath the silence. The image of clouds dissolves into the quiet reflection of a gate window, the one from earlier that morning. Now it's empty. Peaceful. The chaos is gone, but its echo remains a memory, a message, a standard. Voiceover, calm and close, like someone leaning just enough to be heard. Most people will never stand at a gate and be told they don't belong. But many will stand somewhere at a counter, in a boardroom, in a moment, where someone tries to measure their worth by what they see instead of who they're facing. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can shrink to fit their vision, or you can stand in your truth until the room learns how to see you. The music swells, subtle, steady. Clips of the story flash in slow motion, the boarding pass scan turning green, the frozen monitors, Jenna's trembling hands, Amara's calm face against the glare of the window. Voiceover continues. Amara didn't shout. She didn't curse. She didn't fight to be seen. She simply was. And sometimes that's the loudest thing you can be. Because silence, when it stands tall, can still change the world. Quote, footage of Amara's plane flying through sunlight fades slowly into the horizon. Words appear one by one across the sky. Number Raise the Standard. Number Amara Johnson. Number Hidden Power Stories. Voiceover lowers to a whisper final, grounded, absolute. Power doesn't need permission. Truth doesn't need volume. And justice just needs witnesses. The piano holds its final note. Black screen. End. Title card. If you believe in dignity and justice, like this story and subscribe for more. Because silence, when it stands tall, can still change the world. No revenge, no noise, just justice done right, done quiet. See you in the next story.